BamaCentral.com. I'm Blake Byler, and this is the Extra Point. I'm joined by staff writer Katie Windham, and we are going to be discussing Alabama's loss to Auburn last night. So, Katie, you were at the game. Tell me, what kind of impact do you think Auburn Arena had on the game, just to start out with?
Yeah, well, obviously it's probably the toughest place in the SEC to play, but ultimately I really don't think that's what um, had that much of an impact on Alabama's downfall because they came out of the game strong, had a lead early on, kind of led for the first part of the game, and then were able to get back into the game even when they faced a big deficit. So obviously the crowd was big and made a lot of noise, but I don't know if that was necessarily really had that much to do with Alabama's lack of success because they played in front of big crowds this year. But I mean, it's always props to Auburn for the environment they've been able to create down there.
What do you think caused Alabama to kind of get in that hole early on in the first half?
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I mean, me and you were both down there last night, where it would be, Alabama was up 14-10, and then it seems like seconds later they're down 19. And so a lot of it, Nate Oates talked about last night in the post game. His big things were transition defense, giving up too many points in transition. I think he said they had 18. Auburn had 18 points in transition at halftime, which is a ton. And when you're letting them get those easy buckets, like those are going to add up quick. And a lot of that comes from poor shot selection. When you don't get a good shot off, or you take too long in the shot clock, or you turn it over, it gives them easier opportunities at the bucket. And then just Alabama was just outmatched in the paint. And we saw that throughout the game, but it kind of led to that hole in the first half too.
Right. And Auburn has so many weapons. And so just a couple empty trips from Alabama and you go down, and Auburn has so many guys that can make you pay. So that'll turn into a deficit really quickly. What do you think Alabama did the best last night?
Yeah, well, last night was one of their better three-point shooting performances in a while, the best in SEC play so far by number made and percentage. So that's a good sign that some shots finally started falling. And Nate Oates talked about too that run that they had coming out of the second half to cut the lead down to 2 after trailing by as much as 19 and 14 at halftime. That group of 5 that was on the floor then, Keon, Shaq, JQ, Bediako, and Gary. Shaq and JQ did the majority of the scoring, but it was all 5 of those guys contributing on offense and defense that led to that run. But the problem, like you said too, was Auburn's so deep at all positions, and Alabama doesn't quite have that depth that when those players got tired and they had to go to the bench, there was a little bit of a drop off. But that 5 showed they're capable with playing with anyone in the country and on offense and defense, as evidenced by facing the number 1 team in the country and kind of having that run. But you just need a little bit more from some other guys too.
Right. So up until really this past Saturday, Javon Quinterly had really been in some sort of rut. But we saw against Baylor on Saturday, he played really well and was really the engine to Alabama's offense. And he led almost single-handedly the comeback last night that cut it to 2 early in the second half. How important is he going to be going forward, and how can he build on last night going into another tough game against Kentucky?
Yeah, he's huge for this team. He kind of struggled in the first half against Auburn, but then, like you said, really turned it on the second half, particularly in that run. Only had 4 points at halftime. Then I think had like 9 pretty quickly coming out of the second half. But he's kind of that guy we've talked about that Alabama doesn't necessarily have a go-to scoring guy, and he can be that guy. And last night he was successfully getting around pretty much any guy he wanted to. He got around Kessler a couple times, but because of Auburn's size, once he got down in the paint, he's not able to get off as many shots as he normally can. But he'll be huge for Alabama's success going forward. And then also, 2 other things that were kind of brought up on social media this week and that we talked about last night at the game is Alabama's undefeated when J.D. Davison scores double digits or when Juwan Gary plays 25 minutes. And neither of those things happened last night. And so those are 2 things to kind of look for going forward too, especially with Kentucky coming in on Saturday.
Absolutely. And yeah, Alabama will be back in action against Kentucky in Coleman Coliseum on Saturday, a 7 o'clock tip. Once again, I'm Blake Byler from BamaCentral, and this